Hey everybody, it's Buzz. Yesterday, I caught up with reading Black Clover. I only started Black Clover about 2 weeks ago, so it is a very new series to me. I had never seen the anime, really experienced anything with it at all, besides just people mocking it on Twitter. And I decided to just go ahead and give it a try, because I had been craving a bit of action shonen recently, and I hadn't really read that many, and I hadn't really read one in a little while. I was thinking, you know what, it should be a pretty quick read. If it's anything like Bleach, I should be able to read the entire thing in a few days, it shouldn't be too long. And, I do have some thoughts about this series. I know that there are some people who I know on manga discords and stuff like that have really hate this series. There are some people on some discords that I know that really love this series. And it's been, from what I've been hearing about the series, it's been a very mixed bag. A lot of people trashing it, and a lot of people saying it's their favorite series ever. So I was very curious about where the series, would actually land for me. And so first of all, for those that were as unaware of the series as I was before, I'm gonna tell you guys about it real quick. Black Clover is a Japanese manga series written and illustrated by Yuki Tabata. The story follows Asta, a young boy born without any magical power. This is unknown to the world he lives in because seemingly everyone has some sort of magical power. With his fellow mages from the Black Bulls, Asta plans to become the next Wizard King. That's not really the full synopsis. There's also a secondary main character who is the childhood friend of Asta, who, in contrast to him, has extremely strong magical powers. His name is Yuno. Going into, the world of the series, the main place this series takes place in is called the Clover Kingdom. They have these magic knight squads, which are essentially this world's military, and depending on how powerful you are, you can end up in these magic knight squads, and then they'll send you on missions to defend the Clover Kingdom. Some of the different squads in this world are very interesting. Some of them are pretty generic, to be honest. A lot of the captains in this series are really nice, really fleshed out characters that are really interesting. Some of the lore behind the captains I found to be very interesting, and some of the most engaging lore that this series had to offer. Some of the more mysterious backstories between some of the characters is very intriguing to me. There's also some infighting between the different Magic Knight squads as well, so, you also get your classic good guys fighting other good guys, Shonen Jump action in here too. There's other evil organizations and other nations in this world, so there's always a new fresh batch of people for the Magic Knights to have to fight, leading to this series being very, very battle-dependent, in a good way. This is very much a battle shonen, and that's when the series is at its best. The fight scenes are fantastic in this series. Asta is this very serious kid who, he's a very morally kind-hearted person who never wants to give up on anybody, who's always trying to help people. But he doesn't have any magical power, and he lives in a world where magical power is essentially what ranks you in the world. People consider people with no magic or small amounts of magic to be literally, lower life forms, basically. They really hate people that don't have magic in this world. And Asta is completely magicless. But Asta being completely magicless actually comes to his advantage, because having no magic, he gains the ability of anti-magic, which means he can actually fight physically with a lot of enemies. And so Asta, kind of feels like a strength build in Dark Souls. He's going around big bunking everybody while everybody's trying to use all sorts of fancy magic spells and stuff like that. This is a very fun action series. It's a very fun battle shonen. Lots of, I'm never gonna give up, I'm gonna swing this heavy sword and crush everything type action scenes. And honestly, it's just very fun seeing someone like Asta, swing a huge sword that's very obviously inspired from the Dragon Slayer from Berserk. It's very enjoyable, this series will really get you pumped up with all of the action scenes. This series is almost exclusively fighting. This series has a lot of exposition and stuff, which explains the magic systems and the world building, but it's very quick. A lot of these will be it'll be a fight between some characters, and then there'll be half a chapter of world building, and then they'll say, oops, all fights, and then 3 more bad guys will pop up. This series is basically fight. As soon as one ends, you can pretty much guarantee a new fight is going to start in the next chapter. It's very straightforward. The series really doesn't beat around the bush at all with just how action heavy this is. If you want a popcorn series, we can say, oh, that looks cool, this is a good series for that. It honestly was very enjoyable, you know, to see all these characters try and learn all these crazy shonen protagonist moves, and just, you know, beat out some bad guys. You know, it's kind of like a Michael Bay manga, basically. It's just goofy and enjoyable, and that aspect of the series was really nice. I'm not really going to go into any spoilers for this series because, I mean, it's not done yet. It's just on hiatus right now. One of the main things I've known about this series was just how controversial it is on Twitter and stuff like that. Like, a lot of people, like I said earlier, a lot of people have been trash talking this series and saying it's the worst thing ever. And then a lot of people have been saying it's their favorite series. And honestly, I really can't see both sides. Because on one hand, this series doesn't really do anything new. This series doesn't really have anything which is fresh. It feels like it jumps around, like, parodying different series. Like, there is an arc which feels very, very Bleach inspired. And then there's some stuff later on that feels very Bloodborne inspired. And then there's some stuff later on that feels like exactly like Berserk, and like the art style even changes for some of the monsters to look like Berserk monsters. You can really tell that Tabata, you know, like, as he consumes other media, he, like, brings that into his series. And sometimes it feels like plagiarism, but other times it just feels like fun references to say, hey, look, that character design is exactly from this series. You know, that's this type of world, but, you know, this type of magic is exactly from this series. And it's fun. You don't really feel like it's a bad thing when stuff gets borrowed, because it's done in such a goofy way. You don't really mind. You know what I mean? Like, this series not original. This series doesn't really feel original at all. But honestly, I wouldn't really say that's a bad thing because of how enjoyable, like, some of the fights can be. Now, this series does drag sometimes. There are some arcs in this series that I found to be a bit of a slog to get through. There were some fights I just did not care about. There are some slower world-building elements that I thought added pretty much nothing besides, you know, attempting to make you feel some sort of emotion for a villain or some new character they get introduced. Sometimes I felt like the series was trying to pull on my heartstrings a bit too hard. The writing seems to imply that we should care about a character, but a lot of times I just never really connected with a lot of the characters. I felt like, oh good, it's sad backstory number 39, very repetitive, like, one chapter traumatic backstories for every character. It gets very repetitive, and you kind of, like, lose interest. Here's the childhood chapter for this character, and you just kind of zone out. And to be honest, the art is fantastic. The fight choreography and the art is absolutely wonderful. There's some really unique powers in this series. This series will really get your blood pumping if you're into action shonen. The fighting and the fight choreography is, like, actually genuinely good. If you're into things kind of like the Jujutsu Kaisen anime, and you just like really visually appealing fights, this manga has that sort of thing in manga form, if that makes sense. It's just very, like, visually pleasing to see these characters, you know, learn all their new powers and use their powers and stuff like that. Tabata is actually, like, a genuinely super good artist. I know some people have been trashing on the art, because this series has some unfinished art. If you read this, if you have the Shonen Jump app, and you're reading the individual chapters and you're not buying the ebooks, it has some unfinished chapters. Like, there's a number of chapters in this series which have unfinished art. Like, there's actually some penciling as the art in this series, but, you know, a lot of people have been writing the art off as saying, oh, here's an unfinished chapter, wow, it looks really bad. And it's like, no. Here's the thing, even when the art is unfinished in this series, it still looks great. Even if there's a page which is literally just the penciling and never even got inked, it still looks good. Like, if Tabata did, like, a sketch randomly for a chapter, it probably would look super baller. Like, it's just good art, even if it's unfinished. Of course, all the unfinished art was actually replaced and finished for the Tenkoban volumes. If you buy the physical volumes, or if you buy the ebooks, you're gonna get all the finished art. Everything got replaced that wasn't finished before during the weekly release, so, you know, most people that actually buy it physically aren't ever gonna have that problem. And yeah, I guess that's pretty much everything. I don't know if I'll be reading this weekly when it starts back up again, since a lot of the chapters were quite short. A lot of the chapters were 15 pages. So I'll probably not read this weekly when it comes back, but I will definitely finish it immediately as soon as it wraps up. I had a lot of fun with the series. I want to be very serious here and be like, because of these problems, I will be giving it a 6 out of 10. I want to say that, but honestly, the series was just so fun. I want to give it a 7 out of 10. And that's probably what I'll give it when the series finishes, eventually. I don't know how long the final arc is going to be. I had a good time with this series. It wasn't perfect, it had a lot of flaws, but it was a very above average for me, and I liked it a lot. I had fun. And the fact that my ADD brain didn't give up on this series immediately, you know, and actually read the whole thing, I hope is a testament to this series. And I'll say, if you like series like Bleach and Naruto, you would like this too. I don't really know why there's so much infighting in the manga community about this series. It doesn't really seem to do anything bad, so I don't know what that's about. But okay. But anyways, you know, whatever. Twitter will be Twitter. I had fun. And I had fun is probably the best way to sum up this series. I'm glad I read it. So anyways, thanks for watching, everybody. If you want to see more videos like this, you can like and subscribe and whatever. And I guess I'll be out of here. Thanks for watching, everybody. See ya.